morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Kent. I am Lori Merkin-McGee, and I serve this congregation as a commissioned lay minister. I'm joined in welcoming you by Worship Associate Elaine Bowen. Thank you for joining us this morning as we gather once again, both in person and on Zoom, a spiritual community that seeks to be diverse and inclusive as we inspire love, work for justice, and grow together in community. We extend a special welcome to our visitors this morning. Thank you for worshiping with us. Once again, I bid you welcome. Now, let us take a moment to breathe, to enter into this time of community once again, and to invite the Spirit of life to be present among us as we reflect on our shared life and work together. Come, let us worship together. Our prelude is a song that many of you know, so I would invite you to sing along if you know the words. If you don't, you'll catch on very quickly.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love.
Almost 3 years ago, life as we knew it changed. Suddenly, we were shut out and closed off from places and activities that had given our lives so much meaning. In my life, for my children, it meant the end of eating out on Friday nights, the end of Saturday bowling, and going to the movies. We adjusted. Weekly takeout, Saturday family movie nights. But the biggest adjustment for me was church, my spiritual and social hub. The technology of virtual church was a steep learning curve for me, as it may have been for others. With the help from patient friends, I slowly got the hang of it. But even after Sunday service, there loomed the expanse of 6 very long, tedious, and lonely days until the next Sunday. It really wasn't working for me. Reverend Stephen and our Hal Walker to the rescue with Wednesday night Vespers, my midweek pandemic life preserver with one lifeline in particular. Our second song every week was There Is a Love that we just sang. The first few weeks I heard it, I simply cried behind my muted screen. Eventually, I could sing it aloud, but most of the time I listened in reverence as it washed over me like a wave of comfort. There was a love holding me, and that love was you, my family of Unitarian Universalists. You were the glue helping hold me together during that extremely difficult time. Church eventually reopened and a degree of normalcy returned for many, but not for me. I had changed. Or perhaps the pandemic changed me in ways I could not have imagined. I believed I would fully embrace all my pre-pandemic activities and jump right back in with full involvement and enthusiasm. I couldn't wait to greet all of you with a smile and even bigger, long hugs. I tried. Goodness knows I tried. But it didn't happen, and I could not make it happen. Repeopling myself and trying to be social was incredibly uncomfortable, almost painful. I was, and still am, having difficulty reintegrating myself into social situations with more than one or two people. I regretfully but necessarily needed to step back from several commitments that I could not give even partial attention to. I gave this thing a name: post-pandemic repeopling syndrome. You may notice that I have been sitting in the rear corner of the sanctuary where Colleen is right now, along that south wall with my knitting and engaging to the degree to which I am able and reasonably comfortable. And I know that where I am on this repeopling journey, there is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. I rest in this love. I heal in this love. I live in this love. As Unitarian Universalists, we light a flame within a chalice to unite us in worship, to remind us of our ongoing search and journey for the light of truth within and among us, and to be a light that reveals to us the beauty of our world and the beauty in each other. As Blaze lights our shared chalice in this sanctuary, I invite you to light your home chalices. And please join me in reading these words by J.E. Abernathy, Jr. We affirm that love is our greatest purpose. Accepting one another is the truest form of faithful living. The search for truth is our constant star. We pledge our hearts, minds, and hands to challenge injustice with courage, to find hope in times of fears, and to live out our Unitarian Universalist values every day as a beloved community. Thus, we do covenant with each other and all that is sacred in life.
All right. Kiddos, if you want to come up to get a closer look at the story, you're welcome to join us up here. And by kiddos, I mean, obviously, anyone. I'm here already. Sonis has got a perfect seat. This morning, our story is called, thank you. Hi, Renee. It's called The Invisible Web, and it was written by Patrice Karst, and the illustrations are by Joanne Lou Vratov. The very best news ever has begun to spread all over the world, one heart at a time, shouted from the mountaintops. Every single one of us is connected to those we love by invisible strings. That means Giovanna and her daddy are always together, even though he moved to a new house. And Omar can feel the tugs of love from his parents even though he's living far away at school. And Mr. Chang still feels Mrs. Chang close by, even though she died such a very long time ago. And you, at this very moment, may feel the string of someone close to you, even though they aren't here. You can't see it, but it's real. Our strings reach out to everyone we know. They travel far and wide, to family and friends and classmates and coaches, to bus drivers and babysitters and neighbors and pets and aunts and uncles and grandparents and grandchildren and countless other people. And all of those people have hundreds of strings. I had to flip it, yeah. Soaring high over rocky peaks and across the 7 seas, deep into the jungles and valleys and winding through the busiest cities, all of these strings crisscross one another and create a nest that covers the planet, interlacing us together, cradling us forever. The invisible web. The web has no borders and wraps every continent. Within it, lives butterflies and flowers and starfish and seahorses, lions and ants, rivers and snowstorms, and all human beings, Giovanna, Omar, Mr. Chang, and of course, you and me. Some say it even reaches to our ancestors and those we cherish in the beyond. One tug on the string sends love to every one of us woven together in this divine tapestry. And that means just one good deed travels the entire world. Everything is linked. But sometimes folks forget. And when they can't feel their strings, they forget about our invisible web. And that is when strings get all tangled up. Like when lonely Luisa isn't invited to sit with anyone at her school at lunchtime. Or when sad Stefano wishes that his friend Marcos wasn't so bossy when they played. Or when Mrs. Patel struggles at work without help and she just wants to quit.
So I think it's pronounced Stefano.
Stefano? I'll go with that. Even violence and war can erupt when too many of us forget the web. And when strings are ignored, they can become weak and begin to unravel. But the more who care for the web, the stronger it remains. The web feels like every parent or caregiver since the beginning of time, holding and protecting each one of us in millions of gentle arms. What could be stronger than all those hands holding us close? So many supportive fingers can always find ways to untangle the strings so that love can flow again. But it's up to every one of us to spread the word. And our time is right now. As we tell our family and friends, sisters will remind brothers, siblings will remind siblings, who will write to cousins, and who will call their great-grandparents, who will just nod and smile as though they've always known. If we remember the web and tug at it often, no one will ever be left out, and we will see others more clearly. The people of the world will look into each other's eyes, and they will smile at one another. And when one of them cries, they will all want to help. And they do. Marcos apologizes to what did you say, John? Stefano. Marcos apologizes to Stefano, who forgives his friend, and they have even more fun playing. Someone helps Mrs. Patel at her job and tells her what a great job she's doing, and she remembers that she is important and feels happy. And Luisa feels warm and bubbly inside when a few of the kids in the class ask her to join them under the banyan tree for lunch. And she knows right then that the invisible web is real. After school, Luisa cries with joy as she strokes her cat, who purrs the news to the stars, and the stars whisper the secret to the clouds, who share it with the songbirds, who serenade the world with this exquisite melody of love at the start of each morning and all during the day, until, as the invisible web glitters in the magic of twilight, the owls take over and hoot the news throughout the night. Yes. Oh, that was good. I like that. That was good. The invisible web is alive. Its time is right now. It breathes as we breathe, pulsating over the earth, the single heartbeat of life and of love. And do you know what that makes us all? Interconnected, a very, very big family. And P.S., the author leaves this note for you, and I agree. I just love being right here in the very middle of this invisible web with you and all of you. I wonder, how will you help support the web? What tugs will you put on the web this week and send out into the world?
One of the best gifts we can give ourselves in our busy lives and in these challenging times is to care for our spiritual selves. Each week we create a time of shared stillness for prayer, reflection, meditation, or simply being, to be in touch with who we are, to reflect on our life, and reconnect with the sacred mystery that is at the very heart of life itself. Let's enter the stillness together. Life is a mystery that brings many things. Part of our experience is struggle and loss. In the spirit of being a community of compassion and care, we take time now to share those sorrows, struggles, and losses that are in our hearts. If you are joining us on Zoom this morning and have a sorrow, loss, or struggle, please use the chat box. David and Randy, and probably many of you share that we would send loving thoughts to Hale Dodds, who has returned to a rehab facility. We send Hale all of our thoughts of healing and health. Anne shares a sorrow that she is thinking of her friend Mandy and Mandy's husband Ben as Mandy enters hospice. We send them all our love and concern. Marilee shares a wish for prayers to Katie, whose cousin lost her child yesterday. An unimaginable loss. We send love to them. For all of these concerns and those you hold in your hearts, we offer our grateful thanks.
Spirit of love, we have been brought together on this sunny February morning. We have been brought together from many places, but for one reason: to be with each other in beloved community. We have all been caught in that web of love, that holds us one to another. Though we may not know each other well, we know this: we are all connected. We are connected by our humanity. We are connected by empathy. We are connected by love of life, love of our faith, love of our families and our friends, love for those who are difficult to love, love for those unknown to us, but still no less deserving of the most precious gift that life can give us, which is love. Amen, and blessed be.
Life also brings us joy, wonder, and awe. We've experienced moments this week that have lifted our hearts and our spirits. Once again, I would like to invite the Zoom people to use the chat box. Kay is joyful of the return of Jeff Z, our coffee guru. I am grateful for all of you. Look at this room. It's practically full. We haven't been doing that for a while, so woo! With gratitude for these and every blessing we receive in life, for the gift of life itself, for the companionship of one another on life's journey, for the beauty of this world and this day of possibility, we raise our hearts in gladness with the word, Amen.
Our first reading is titled, I Want to Be with People by Dana L. Warsnop, something I am still working on. Often people say they love coming to a place with so many like-minded people. I know just what they're getting at, and I know they aren't getting it quite right. I don't want to be with a bunch of people who think just like me. I want to be in a beloved community where I don't have to think like everyone else to be loved, to be eligible for salvation. I want to be with people who value compassion, justice, love, and truth, though they have different thoughts and opinions about all sorts of things. I want to be with independent-minded people of good heart. I want to be with people who have many names and no name at all for God. I want to be with people who see in me goodness and dignity, who also see my failings and foibles, and who still love me. I want to be with people who feel their interconnection with all existence and let it guide their footfalls upon the earth. I want to be with people who see life as a paradox and don't always rush to resolve it. I want to be with people who are willing to walk the tightrope that is life and who will hold my hand as I walk mine. I want to be with people who let church call them into a different way of being with the world. I want to be with people who support, encourage, and even challenge each other to higher and more ethical living. I want to be with people who inspire one another to follow the call of the Spirit. I want to be with people who covenant to be honest, engaged, and kind, who strive to keep their promises and hold me to the promises I make. I want to be with people who give of themselves, who share their hearts and minds and gifts. I want to be with people who know that human community is often warm and generous, sometimes challenging, and almost always a grand adventure. In short, I want to be with people like you. Our second reading, In Love by Charles Thomas, is a responsive reading. After I finish the phrase and pause, please respond, let us love. Rooting ourselves in love as the source of all we are, let us love. Acknowledging every person and all of nature as unique, important, and wanted, let us love. Learning that we are not whole until all beings are whole, let us love. Sharing and relating to one another as each feels comfortable, let us love. Working to be anti-racist and opposing every oppression, let us love. Drawing near to beloved community on this, our one planet, let us love.
have to be honest with you this morning. Up until a couple weeks ago, I had no idea what I was going to preach about today. None. When I signed up in December to fill this, I figured I had plenty of time to come up with something. Fast forward to January, I was having a conversation with Reverend Stephen after a meeting when he casually asked, "What's your service about on the 5th?" And I said, "I don't know, but I better come up with it quick." We chuckled, of course, and continued our conversation. We were talking about how volunteerism is down in churches across the nation, and people are feeling really disconnected. And we were imagining opportunities for reconnection among the congregation. We started talking about the before times, not as you might think, the COVID before times, but rather the long ago before times with our previous minister, Reverend Melissa Carvel-Zemer. She was very much beloved to us, and her departure left a huge hole to fill. During her final weeks with us, she would talk about how much she loved us almost every single Sunday. She told the story of falling in love with this congregation during the first few months of her tenure here. She was gushing about us to a colleague of hers, who then said, "You're falling in love with them. How wonderful." This little story really amazed me. I had never before considered that you could fall in love with church. But of course you can. I imagine we all have at some point, or we wouldn't be here. More on this later, but now back to my conversation with Reverend Stephen. The conversation, as conversations are wont to do, zigged and zagged, and somehow we ended up talking about the liminal time between Melissa and Reverend Stephen. Through a series of unfortunate events, we were ministerless for about 11 months, from October of 2017 to August of 2018. I told Reverend Stephen that instead of running the other way, many people stepped up to the task of making sure we continued to offer worship services, pastoral care, and programming until we had a full-time minister again. For many of us, it was like having a part-time job. But we did it, happily, because we love this church community. Instead of calling it quits, we circled up tighter and held on, out of love. And then Reverend Stephen said, "Well, there's your sermon." And here we are. Today, we find ourselves in a liminal time once again, not from grief over losing a minister, but from the long years apart during the worst of the COVID pandemic. Being able to meet virtually was, and still is for many, a blessing. But for a lot of us, the isolation of those many months was insufferable, especially for those living alone. In 2020, this congregation had only just really started to recover from losing Melissa and being ministerless, and here we were again, only 4 years later, at the beginning of a pandemic, facing grief and loss once more. And yet again, we persevered, because we love this church. What do you love about this church? Friends. Social justice. The yellow light in through the windows, yes. Music. Our youth. This building. Yes. Friends. Curiosity. Camping. Okay, we lost that. Summer Institute. That's a wider love, right? The freedom to be. Lovely.
That's before time is over.
Yes. Children's service, okay, very good. Say it again. Sacred space. Flowers. Peace. Thank you. There is acceptance. Wonderful. There is a folktale from Africa with a similar version from China, as folktales often happen with folktales. There's similar versions across the globe that sort of rise up at the same time. And this folktale tells of a great feast planned by a village elder. This feast, he said, will be lavish and wonderful, and all I need from you, my 10 council members, is to bring 1 jug of wine for the common supply. The youngest council member, of course, thinks that this is too dear to contribute a whole jug of wine. So he and his wife concoct a plan to bring 1 jug of water instead, thinking that 1 jug of water couldn't possibly spoil a whole vat of wine. So on the feast day, they all gather. They gather their jug of wine at the well and pour it into the vat. The wine is poured out during the meal, and when everyone takes a drink, they discover there's no wine at all, only water. Everyone had the same idea, to indulge in the feast, but not to contribute to its success. The next day, a new saying arose among the people of that town: if you wish to take wine, you must give it also. Erica Hewitt, a Unitarian Universalist minister, writes, hearing this story today, we can appreciate its truth too. When we share with our community, it is truly felt and appreciated. But when we would try to withhold from our community to keep something all to ourselves, it can hurt that community. In our story this morning, the 10 council members were asked to bring a small amount of wine to the feast. As you heard, each of them withheld their wine and instead brought water, each of them believing that 1 jug of water could hardly spoil such a lavish feast. From that story, we learn the importance of each person's gift and each person's willingness to share those gifts. She asks, what is it that you bring to our community? What will you share from your heart and your spirit to contribute to the whole? There is no denying that our congregation looks different since we returned to being in person, face to face. We have folks who can only join us virtually, and we have many new lovely faces among us. We offer virtual service and virtual attendance for almost every single committee meeting. We are striving to be inclusive to everyone because everyone is part of the whole. Everyone has something to share. So I ask you, what is it you bring to our community? What will you share from your heart and your spirit to contribute to the whole? What will you share? Uh-oh. You know what? You could probably answer with the same word you said before. Peace, community, music, acceptance, flowers, love, children, all the things, right? Voices, all of it. It's all the same answer. Because what we love, we also give. Last week we spoke about service as a spiritual practice. This is not, of course, a new idea. Eric Wickstrom, a Unitarian Universalist minister, wrote a whole book about it called Serving with Grace. He posits that active participation in the life and work of the church empowers us to make it our spiritual home by infusing it with our values. The true work of making a spiritual community happens not only on Sunday morning, but also in every committee, every shared meal, every board meeting, every single place and time that congregants gather together. When we view service through the lens of spiritual practice, we realize we have a stake in the outcome. We not only give of ourselves to make the whole better, but we also have the chance to practice patience, listening, self-reflection, and so much more. I believe that we can best see service as a spiritual practice if we are already in love with the church. And I think the best way to fall in love with the church is through service. That's a neat little bow, isn't it? The church is not a building. The church is the congregation. A church is made up of people who love it, who care for it, who nurture it. And just like any other relationship, a church can be frustrating and disappointing. We are a people committed to making this church the best it can be. So we stick with it, even or especially when it's difficult to do so. There is a love here, holding all of us. A love where we can rest when we need to. A love that provides a soft place to fall when we're weary from the troubles of this world. I invite you all to fall in love, or perhaps fall in love again, with this church community. Open your heart to all that can be found here among these amazing, awesome humans. You just might be surprised at what you discover. May it be so.
Our spiritual community thrives in a shared life of worship, community, and ministry as each of us participates in the circle of giving and receiving. This is possible due to your generous gifts of time, money, and care for each other, and the recognition that we are all connected. We are all connected. Thank you. To help others in our community thrive, we also give to agencies and organizations in Kent and beyond that serve those in need. Our February special collection will benefit the Portage County branch of the NAACP. Their mission is to ensure the political, educational, social, and economic rights of all persons and to eliminate racial hatred and racial discrimination. In the spirit of gratitude for the gift of one another in this community and the abundance that makes this generosity possible, we now give and receive the offering as a sign of our shared commitment to the life and work of this congregation and beyond.
With a mind that holds a plan, with a hand that holds a key, with a heart that holds a dream, love reaches out. When a family's torn apart, when the street is all you have, when your faith begins to break, love reaches out. Love reaches out, love reaches out, here by your side, bringing you home, love reaches out. Through the pain your eyes have seen, through the voices in your head, through the war you still endure, love reaches out. To the man who asks for change, to the mother and the child, to the elder all alone, love reaches out. Love reaches out. Love reaches out. Here by your side, bringing you home, love us take this night to strike and inspire. Let love and compassion be the source that fuels the fire. If you find yourself in need, if you fear what lies ahead, if we forge a path of trust, love reaches out. Where hope replaces hate, where wounds begin to heal, where we all will have a home, love reaches out. Love reaches out. Love reaches out. Here by your side, bringing you home. Love reaches out. Love reaches out. Love reaches out. Here by your side, bringing you home. Love reaches out. Here by your side, bringing you home. Love reaches out.
Will you please join me now in the words for extinguishing our chalice? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. May we carry these in our hearts and minds until we are together again. Love astounding. The words will be on the screen.
Love astounding, love confounding, limits fearful minds impose. Love renewing, love pursuing every heart until it knows. Love's transforming, healing goodness, love's abiding, gentle grace, love's endurance, love's assurance, love's consoling, strong embrace. Love receiving, love believing, we rejoice with thanks and song. Faith regaining, hope proclaiming, love has taught us we belong. Safe within love's tender keeping, safe from fear's persistent call. Love defending, love unending, love is here enfolding all.
May our faith sustain us, our hope inspire us, and our love surround us as we go our separate ways, knowing that we will gather again in this community. And now let us go forth as we continue to inspire love, seek justice, and grow. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. And I feel the love in you.